Okay, so I'm making some gnocchi for dinner tonight. Perfect weather outside in the Northeast. And I started with about 6 medium-sized Yukon Gold potatoes. You can either bake those around 400 degrees for about an hour until they're tender, or I peeled them and simmered them in salted water, starting in cold water, until they were tender. And then I dried them in a low oven, 300 degrees, for about 5 or 6 minutes. Then I put them through a food mill. You could use a ricer, you could mash them with a potato masher, and then I let them sit on the counter until they were cool to touch. And now, so I measured them, I weighed them out. I had about a little bit over a pound and a half of potatoes. And so I'm going to start with, this was a total of 8 ounces of flour here. So I'm going to go by eye. I put, maybe it's half or so. That's, I happen to be using gluten-free flour, and I'm also using chickpea flour. I really like the flavor of that incorporated in here. I've got approximately a half a cup or so of Parmesan cheese. You can omit that. You don't need it if you don't want it. And then I have one egg, one whole egg, and one yolk. Now, typically it's about one whole egg per pound that you're going to be using. I have here, it's about, I don't know, I picked some herbs from the garden, some sage and some parsley chopped up. Maybe that's 2 tablespoons-ish. I'm going to put some freshly ground black pepper in here, along with some salt. And since tonight I'm going to serve them with some butternut squash, I am going to put a little bit of nutmeg in there. Not too much, but a little bit. For flavor, I prefer to use fresh grated nutmeg. Definitely gives you a better flavor for sure. All right, so now we're going to start to incorporate and mix this into the potatoes. And you see I'm using a bench scraper here, which really is an ideal tool for this. Okay, so you're working carefully, gently working the eggs into the mixture, working the flour from the outside into this mixture to form a nice dough. Bench scraper definitely gets you started in a good way. This way you don't have the eggs running all over the counter. And now, and since this is gluten-free flour, there really isn't a huge issue with overworking the gluten, so to speak, but certainly you can make the potatoes a little bit pasty, which, by the way, is one reason I allow them to cool first before mixing everything in, because that seems to help with that. And while I'm doing this, I want to talk a little bit about the cooking method. So there are people that will say, oh, you absolutely have to bake the potatoes. You cannot boil them because there's too much moisture. Yeah, well, that's certainly one theory. I don't necessarily agree with it. If, as I mentioned, you dry the potatoes in the oven afterwards to kind of dry out that surface moisture. Now, if you do that, as I mentioned earlier, you want a low oven because you don't want the potatoes to get very leathery on the outside and dry, which is going to give the gnocchi a bad texture. So now you can see that this is really formed into a pretty nice dough here. It's feeling a little bit tacky to me, but I think it's pretty good. So I'm going to do a little tester with this. And I'm going to check the consistency, the seasoning. I want to see how this is going to hold up. So I'm just going to cut a small piece off of this. And then I'm going to wash my hands. Through the magic of television, I'm back. So now I'm going to move this over. I'm going to give a light dust of flour here. And I'm going to roll this into a small log. And I'm going to cut these into small pieces. So just for this test, I'm not doing a ton of them here. I'm going to simply take a fork, cut side down, put your thumb in, and roll them. Okay? Again, thumb in, roll them. Nice and simple. And then these are going to go into a pot of boiling salted water. And they're going to float up to the top. I'm going to check them for seasoning and consistency. And then from there, I'll adjust it accordingly. If they're starting to fall apart a little bit, I'll add a touch more flour. If it needs more seasoning, I'll just add that into that. And then I'm going to roll out cut them into the total dough into ropes, roll them all out, cut all the gnocchi, and then I'm going to par cook them. Okay, so now I have tested the gnocchi, and I slightly adjusted with just a touch more flour, salt, pepper, and a little bit more nutmeg. And now I'm proceeding to roll out all of the, let's call them ropes or strands. So cut the dough into smaller pieces and with my bench scraper. And now using your fingers, rolling out and spreading out to the side. So you're using your flat hand, spreading your fingers out as you're rolling so that you end up with a nice even rope. All right? And yeah, you need a tiny bit of flour to dust on the counter. And then you end up with a really nice even rope. Okay, so now I have all of that rolled out. And again, I'm going to take my bench scraper. Let me back it up so you can see here. And I'm going to cut these into small pieces. They're probably about, I'm going to say, a ½ an inch or so. And so I roll everything out, then cut them. And then I have this is a Garganelli board. You could use it for various other pasta shapes, and I'm using it for my gnocchi today. Again, I'm going to give a little sprinkle on there, cut side down, and roll it onto a lightly floured sheet pan. Cut side down, roll it. You can continue to go as fast as you can right onto that sheet pan. I will get all of them formed, set them in the refrigerator while I get everything else ready for dinner. I'm roasting some butternut squash, toasting some pumpkin seeds, and we'll put the dish together in a bit. Okay, so we're right into the home stretch here, almost done with all. I just wanted to again show you real quickly the pieces that you cut side down, push your thumb in and roll. Push and roll. Once you get going, it's actually a very quick process. And you can see the quantity here that I made, which, as I mentioned, was 1.5 pounds of potatoes. We have just actually one full half sheet pan. And behind me, I have a pot of rondeau coming up to a simmer. I'm going to blanch these off and shock them for later for pickup. Now, you certainly can't cook them a la minute, toss them with a sauce. In the case that I'm going to do here, I'm actually going to shock them, drain them, let them dry a little bit in the refrigerator, and then I'm going to brown them in a pan a little bit when I add then I'm going to add the butternut squash, the pumpkin seeds, maybe some more herbs, maybe not. Okay, so I've dropped the gnocchi into a small rondo of boiling salted water, and as you can see, they're beginning to float to the top. I'm going to make sure that they're all floating, get it back to a gentle simmer, probably going to happen simultaneously, and then I am going to strain them into this ice bath over here that you can see I have a small steamer basket in, so that I don't have to pick ice out of the gnocchi after they're nice and cool. Something that's kind of a little pet peeve of mine. So you can see they've come back up top. They're holding their shape beautifully. And now I'm going to strain them out, shock them, and get ready to heat them up for dinner. Working on finishing the gnocchi dish, and I preheated this pan, nothing in it, over medium-high plus heat. Once it was hot, I just put in a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. Yes, you can cook with extra virgin olive oil. I know what the trolls say, but it's not accurate. And immediately put my gnocchi in. And as you can see, they're browning up beautifully. And now I'm going to add some of the roasted butternut squash. This is just diced butternut squash that I roasted at 425. Oh, I'm going to say it was about, 20 minutes, 22 minutes. And now I'm going to add just some butter to this, a couple of knobs of butter. Let it brown up nice. I'm also going to start to add some of my toasted pumpkin seeds. These were toasted at I don't know, I think it was 325 for probably about 12 minutes as well. And honestly, that's the dish. Relatively easy. And by the way, a great tip is make the gnocchi the day before. This way, when it comes time for dinner, all you have to do is, and you cook them, make the dough, roll them out, cook them, drain them really well, store them in the refrigerator, and then finish the dish.